Identity produces behavior. Identity produces behavior. That's the theme of this study. We begin today, a 6-week study. We'll be going over 6 topics. One is, I am wonderfully made. God has wonderfully made me, and that's going to influence how I behave. Identity determines behavior. I am a child of the King. Because I'm a child of the King, it's going to influence how I behave. I am a minister. I am a priest. I am just passing through. I got my windshield fixed recently. It's been broken for years, cracks all over it for years. And I drive on the road quite a bit. I drive pastor this little country church an hour out of town, and on the road quite a bit. And so I thought, it'll just break again. But I thought, it looks so bad, I'm finally going to get it fixed. So I finally got it fixed. And on the way back from my parents last week, dink, I heard a click, and I looked around, didn't see any damage, and I thought I had dodged a bullet there. Well, this week I see a little crack coming in. And you can get blue about those things, or you can remember, I am just passing through. And because I am just passing through, I can deal with those things. The Bible teaches that I am light. We'll look at that 6 weeks from now. I recommended a book to you last week, The Power of Multisensory Preaching and Teaching. Did you get a chance to look at it? The big idea is a picture really is worth 1,000 words. And if you will show a picture of what you are trying to communicate, it will greatly enhance your preaching and teaching. And I'm going to try to do that today. In other words, I could tell you about a fire, or I could show you a picture of a fire. And which one has the greater impact? I could tell you about a flood, or I could show you a picture of a flood. And you ask yourself, which one has the greater impact? I'd like to recommend a couple of books, 3 books actually. One is Fearfully and Wonderfully Made by Paul Brand and Philip Yancey. Another kind of the sequel, In His Image by Paul Brand and Philip Yancey. I've been reading that one every night as I go to bed the last few nights. And I think you'd find it really helpful. And if you've got some readers in your group, if you can email them and ask them to read a section out of that book and give you a little report and ask you share with the group what was meaningful to them, I think it will help your group to be a more meaningful experience. All right, here is our passage, Psalm 139, 1-6. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. Even my thoughts, you know my thoughts. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. And I'd ask you'd ask a question to your group about this. How does the omniscience, I want your people to know that word over time. They may not know it today, but probably most of them do. They've been coming to church a while. How does the omniscience, the all-knowingness of God, and the omnipresence, the everywhere-ness of God, how does it make you feel? And the answer is, if you're sinning, it doesn't make you feel so too good. But if you're behaving, it'll make you feel pretty good. And another question, what difference would it make if we were all constantly aware of God's watching eye? And the truth is, God is watching whether you are aware of it or not. And the big idea of this section here is that we are comforted. His omniscience and His omnipresence comforts us in our trouble, and it convicts us in our sin. It comforts us if we are in trouble. Knowing that God is with me will comfort me. But if I am sinning, knowing that God is with me will convict me. Here's our key verse though, Psalm 139, verses 13 and following. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Would you say that line with me? Fearfully and wonderfully made. Say it again. Fearfully and wonderfully made. There's something to be said for memorizing Scripture, and there's also something to be said for memorizing half verses. Little segments, little lines. Like you can complete this verse, can't you? You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. We are transformed by the renewing of our mind. And we are fearfully and wonderfully made. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And you want to sink that thought into your people's mind today. I'd encourage you to read a third book I want to recommend, Randy Alcorn's Pro-Life Answers to Pro-Choice Arguments. And he has an incredible story. I'm going to show you a picture here. And a little bit gruesome, but I want to show you this picture because I think it'll make an impression on you and your people. I showed this picture in a sermon that I preached, and somebody came after me afterwards and said, and they don't say this to me often, trust me, but they said to me, every Christian in America ought to hear that sermon. And they were profound. Their mind was profoundly changed because of this picture. And here's the story. In medical developments, for example, in the summer of 1999, an unborn child named Marie Switzer, 24 weeks after conception, was operated on for spina bifida. A photograph of her tiny hand grasping the surgeon's finger was published in Life magazine. It captured the world's attention and won Life's award for Picture of the Year in Science and Technology. Sarah was put back inside her mother and was born 2 months later, 9 weeks premature. That same year, there was another baby, Samuel Armas. That's the picture you see here. Operated on the same condition. Chuck Colson describes it this way. As the surgeon was closing the womb, the miracle happened. Baby Samuel pushed his hand out of the womb and grabbed the surgeon's finger. Photographer Michael Clancy caught this astonishing act on film. And in that instant, Clancy went from being pro-choice to being pro-life. In one moment, he went from being pro-choice to being pro-life. As he put it, I was totally in shock for 2 hours after the surgery. I knew abortion is wrong now. It's absolutely wrong. We see a picture here of the two of them some 12 years later. And we really are fearfully and wonderfully made. And it is a horrible thing, I understand, to say to a woman, you must bear this child that you don't want to bear. I don't fully understand, but I can sympathize with the fact that is difficult. But the question comes down, the question of abortion comes down to, is this a child? And it is unthinkable to me that little baby reaching out for that doctor's finger has no legal right. He has no right to life, because indeed that little baby is fearfully and wonderfully made. I want to encourage you to tell that story to your people and show that picture to people. If you're not set up to have a big screen TV and show them the picture, get them to look at it. Do a search for Armas and abortion on Google, and you'll find that picture. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body, not just a blob, me, my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Another story you might tell is a story recounted in this article. Abortion survivor Melissa Orden details meeting and forgiving her birth mother in a new book. Pro-life activist and abortion survivor Melissa Orden has written a new book that details the meeting with her birth mother and forgiving her. In the book entitled You Carried Me, Orden survived a botched saline abortion as an infant, shares how she discovered the circumstances of her birth, and describes her year-long search for her biological family, specifically her birth mother. In an interview with The Blaze, Orden said she wrote the book because this is a story that needs to be told. And I'm going to skip down just a little bit. You can see more of this if you look at the article online. After making contact with a member of her birth mother's family, Orden found out that her biological parents had been separated by her maternal grandmother, who later coerced her daughter into an abortion. Orden's grandmother also hid her survival from her daughter after the procedure and even tried to demand that the hospital staff leave the infant to die. A nurse saved her life anyway. I was blessed that day, Orden said, even though my grandmother wanted me to be left to die. She said the fact that she could have been abandoned to die following the procedure is proof that such infants deserve to be protected by law and that their lives shouldn't be left to chance, as her own was. There are children like me that survive abortions on a regular basis, she said. I could have died in that hospital and no one would ever have known what is done to me, or nobody worked to save me. They need to be legally obligated to help. My life shouldn't have been dependent on who was working that day, she added. But really, it was. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we as Christians need to speak up for the unborn. Verse 17, how precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. And if you'd like to illustrate this point in a more powerful way as it applies to our life, I would encourage you to show this video by Louis Giglio.
It's the 3 billion character description of who you are written in the language of God. They wrote out your DNA, your human genome of 3 billion characters made up of those 4 simple nucleotides. And when they did, they described who God had ordained you to be. In that one little simple cell. Scientists say if you took the DNA out of that one little cell and stretched it out, that DNA would be 6 feet long. 3 billion characters stretched out to 6 feet long. So amazing that if I were to read your DNA, reading 1 character per second, night and day, it would take me 96 years just to read the description of you. And when they formed together, they wrote out and painted a picture which had never been written before in the history of humankind. And then that cell did the unthinkable. It set out to build that model from 1 cell. I'm telling you, you are a miracle sitting in this building tonight. And you have come a long, long way. I mean, here you are. This may not be in the family photo album, but here you are at 3 days old. 16 cells of you. You say, what in the world is that? It's a 16-cell human embryo on the tip of a safety pin at incredible magnification. So by now, that 1 cell had turned into 16 cells on its way to making the 75 trillion cells that make up your body tonight. Every one of those 75 trillion cells containing that 6 feet of the 3 billion character DNA code that's you. There's so much DNA in your body, by the way. If you stretched it all end to end, there'd be enough DNA to go to the moon and back inside your body. 178,000 times. That's how amazing God has made you to be. 75 trillion cells in your body. And when I told you that, 50,000 of those cells died and were replaced by brand new cells when I told you that. And then just now, 50,000 more cells died and were replaced by brand new cells. It's happening every 3 seconds, day and night, all the days of your existence. And you wonder why you're tired all the time. I'll tell you, you're doing some amazing stuff night and day. We're miracles, you and me. I love the way Augustine said it, one of the great fathers of the church and of the faith. He just nailed it when he said it like this. Men go abroad to wonder at the height of mountains, the huge waves of the sea, the long course of rivers, the vast compass of the ocean, the circular motion of the stars. But they pass by themselves, and they don't even notice. In the womb, miracles happening every moment. Here you are at 5 months in the womb. You remember those days? Those were the good old days. And just miracles happening every second. Let me tell you about 1 million optic nerve endings left the optic nerve center of your brain in the womb, headed for 1 million optic nerves that had left your eye. And they had to meet and match their exact partner, 1 million looking for 1 million. And when they found their exact partner out of 1 million and matched up together, in that instant you had sight. And anyone would tell you that to this moment, the most technologically advanced thing on planet Earth is your eye. Oh, but it didn't do you any good, because when that moment happened, you just had 1 piece of skin completely covering your eyeball. But as I read in one textbook, miraculously and mysteriously at about the 6th month, a little cutting device appeared, and it cut perfectly that piece of skin. And you had eyelids for the very first time in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And the God of the heavens is the one who fashioned you together. And he knows your name tonight. And he knows every single thing there is to know about you. And he's made you a promise that for those who trust in him, he will literally hold them in his hand and carry them all the days of their life.
Fearfully and wonderfully made. Fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm going to give you 3 applications about this before we leave. Number 1, God made me, I am valuable. You ought to see yourself as valuable. God made you. You are fearfully, wonderfully made. God made me and I am valuable. Second application is God made me amazing and I worship God for how he made me. I lay in my bed at night and I think, God, thank you for my hands. God, thank you for my lungs. Thank you for my heart that is beating. I take it for granted and I thank you that you created me with a heart that just keeps beating and beating and beating. And you ought to lead your people to lay in their bed at night and thank God that they are fearfully and wonderfully made. Third application is God made my body and I need to take care of my body. I got convicted about this a few years ago that I realized my whole adult life, I was obese. I was 50 pounds overweight with a BMI in excess of 30. That's clinically obese. And I get convicted that I need to take care of my body. One of the things I discovered in researching and transforming my mind during that era is church people in general are the fattest people on the planet. You can read out on this article right here if you want to find out more about it. But I would encourage you to challenge your people because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We need to take good care of our body. And may God richly bless you as you teach these truths to your people this week.